Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devon Decker, and joining me...
Yeah, I thought you couldn't make it. I thought you were going to be able to make it. Hey, it's your host companion, Sejohn here. What's going on, everybody?
Dude, I am so jacked up and
I
excited.
know. You've been
Because
so excited all week to talk about this
I have been
episode.
so excited for this episode. It's a very special episode, but not really a very special episode. It's just very special.
This is very special, Devon.
But before we get to that, it's very special in terms of what this episode could kind of mean for the future of the Say Report.
Okay.
But before we get to my thing, Sejohn, you have the floor because I'm gonna do a lot of talking today.
Yeah, no, so there's a couple of things that we should get out of the way first and foremost. First, a personal thing, something that I know that Devon has no no stake in whatsoever, but I should definitely talk about this because it's been taking up my life for the last month, and it's finally seemingly come to a close. I have been, as I said last week, and I think I've even talked about it before, I've been diving into the VR experience that is the Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted series. And I got a pleasant surprise at the end, trying to figure out, why this felt so meaningful to me, this weird YouTube thing that I found that I was in, right? And it's weird because I'm a 31-year-old dude. I'm in this weird position now where YouTube stars have been a thing for long enough now where I kind of do actually still fit in with their demographic. It's just that I wasn't raised by YouTube like a lot of their audiences were, right? We're hitting that point where YouTube is hitting that maturity now where it's going to start having people that were all YouTube all the time, right? We live in a world now where the internet just existed for everybody, right? There is a generation of people where the internet is still something newfangled, and those people are old, right? And we've now hit a point.
Translation: we're old.
Well, but that's the thing, right? Is that I don't feel that necessarily because you got to remember I've been going on the internet and doing internet things since I was in kindergarten. So yeah, okay, when I was born, the internet wasn't a thing, but by the time I came around to basically remembering shit, the internet was a thing, right? So I rest firmly, and that's why, despite my arguments to it, no matter how much I fucking kick and scream about this, I am a millennial, right? That there's no way to avoid it. I fit into that time period neatly. My certain views in the world definitely line up with all that bullshit, blah blah blah, right? YouTube is one of those things that is cross-generational from millennial to, what are we calling the next ones? Z? Next?
Generation Z right now.
Z, yeah. So it is one of those things that is kind of cross-generational between millennial and Z. We're finally coming to that moment where we're starting to really kind of have to deal with those kinds of crossover moments, right? And YouTube being one of them. So anyway, I've been exploring this whole thing down YouTube for years. I've been way into this weird Five Nights at Freddy's thing that felt like it was for the youngins, but here I am really kind of deep into it because there's a lot of good stuff in it that is really me. I'm honestly surprised Zach's not more into it. Maybe he is and he just doesn't want to admit it to people. But the whole horror game aspect, I mean, to start off with, the goofy web aspect and how it was kind of spread around is right up my alley. And then what it has become and what it kind of means, because I don't know if you knew this, Dev, but this latest game was actually straight up produced by Lionsgate and Sony because they bought the rights so that they could have it for the first movie, which will inevitably come out.
That is, wow. I did not realize that. This
exactly.
You want to talk about how you're firmly a millennial? I am just this is something I know nothing about. And it's not that I'm afraid of YouTube. It's just, it only recently became something I used as any sort of form of entertainment. And even then, I use it more for information than entertainment.
Infotainment. No, I get and that's really where the wheelhouse is for me. I'm definitely with you there. I use it more to stay up on shit and to make sure that I'm aware of what's going on in the world because it is the place to be right now, right? But there is also a part of me that when I'm bored and don't know what to do with myself, I'll throw on YouTube and see what's new now. That's the point we've hit. I don't channel surf anymore. I tube surf. That's the way that it is. Channel tube? No, tube surf.
Tube
I like
surf
that. I'm
was
sticking
good.
with it.
Yeah.
Never question your first instincts. It's it's improv 101. But so I've been following this Five Nights at Freddy's thing, getting into this stuff, watching various YouTubers play it, following specifically Markiplier. I should give the shout out, credit where credit's due. This YouTuber that is He's a pretty big deal. He was one of the first people to hit 10 million subscribers. In fact, I think he was the first person to get one of those platinum play buttons or whatever the fuck they hand out for that sort of shit. Larry King interviewed him before he left TV. It was one of the last interviews Larry King ever did was with this dude. Um, Anyway, he is the self-proclaimed king of Five Nights at Freddy's, and the guy that creates the Five Nights at Freddy's games has been kind enough to like, keep him in the loop on things and gave him the game early and all this stuff. So he was kind of the one to watch for me for a while, with this. And so I'm watching this VR experience, and the thing is, it's just fucking wild, Dev. Like I've never been a huge I don't know how to put this. Like when people were announcing VR was coming back, I was a skeptic. Like a lot of people were, especially because when some of the stuff that they were showing was getting kind of questionable. The whole magazine cover with what's his nuts there from Oculus Rift jumping in the air in his fucking polo and khakis. Like that was just the worst image ever. And I was like, yep, this is it. This is VR in a fucking nutshell, guys. Great, you killed it. But it hasn't died, like lo and behold. And, I think a huge part of that is owed to a company like Sony, who has really invested so much in the PS4 VR experience, and that being a thing that people can actually get in their hands versus like the $2,000 Oculus Rift. You need to have a giant ass room to play this experience, right?
Right.
Um,
it's consumer
so,
friendly, which is important.
Right,
and Sony
right.
learned that lesson earlier than anybody with Betamax.
And
So-
yeah. And relearned it with things like the Move. Like they've had their missteps. Like let's not kid ourselves. But they have definitely kind of picked up the ball and ran with it with this VR thing. And now here we are where they're straight up producing these games and getting their hands on these IPs that are hugely important. And so like watching this game, I was just like, this is it. This is what VR is all about. There's not a lot of moving around. There's a couple of levels here or there where that's expected of you. I could get into the structure of the game, but honestly, if you haven't been following what FNAF is up until now, like it's hard to explain. But essentially, like, it takes all of the previous games and creates a VR experience that encompasses all of them in a really intelligent way that is true to the style of those games and a really good VR experience. It is kind of like it's the first proof of concept that I have personally seen. And I get it. There have been other VR games out there that people have really kind of fallen in love with. I know what's the one? The one where you run around with a gun and you end up shooting yourself. Super Hot. Super Hot. I know was like a big one for everybody for a while there, and I thoroughly enjoyed watching people play it. But it was never one that I felt like, man, I got to pick up a VR to play. This is the first time where I was like, shit, do I need to invest in VR? Like, man. And then credits roll on this game. I get to the end of it. Big reveal at the end of the story, as always in these games, of like what's really going on. Really fucked up story, wonderfully fucked up. And there's this weird thing where the Sony Lionsgate stuff comes by, and I was like, oh shit, that's okay. I should have realized that the game was on a caliber, like a level that was definitely more than just one dude in a room. And then sure enough, it's because they've bought in on like the rights on this thing. And so like just experiencing this game and realizing what VR has become has really kind of been this weird eye-opening experience for me over the last month, because it's made me realize like a lot of weird shit about like where we are now as gamers, like where I am now as a gamer, where I am now as just a human, as I mentioned, this like 31-year-old being on this earth, and trying to figure out like, I'm pre-midlife crisis, but I can feel it creeping, right? Like, and so it's just been a really unique experience, and one that I really encourage people to really kind of get involved in any way that you can. Look into it on YouTube if that's the way that you consume it, because that's no shame there. That's the way that I started on this stuff. But now I'm wholeheartedly like, I'm gonna invest in this because like it's earned that from me with this moment. And so I'm excited because I'm going to embark on a new journey in my life, Dev, and it's VR.
Good. I'm glad that one of us is taking the plunge into VR.
Yeah.
I'm sort of there with that Trover game from Rick and Morty. I can't think of his name. Dan Harmon, but the other guys involved with it too. Justin Roiland. Like it's their game company, and
there's a ton of people involved in it. I think Rich Fulcher is the one of the
that's why I'm like, the reason why I am interested in Trover is seeing Rich Fulcher in the commercial for it. That just like, I would not care. Like, I like Rick and Morty, like it's a tenuous relationship with it after the third season and the like mask coming off of the fans of Rick and Morty. But then watching the commercial with Rich Fulcher for Trover, I'm like, this is what I came to Rick and Morty for. And
Yeah.
if this is what they're also bringing to a video game, sign me up. But I feel like that's the kind of game I'm gonna play 2D first, and then maybe someday do VR. Like
Yeah.
there's still stuff about VR that frightens me because I am still an old man.
Oh yeah, man.
Um,
Like there's straight up there's a guarantee that you're gonna throw up at least once in your first hours with VR. Like we still haven't gotten past that, right? Like that's something that I'm gonna have to contend with and figure out. Like, do I keep a trash can nearby? Do I just be prepared to run to the bathroom with it? Like that's stupid. I should not have to think about that with a new piece of technology, but here we are,
well,
right? And
I'm
yeah,
also a champion vomiter,
well,
so like I
that's a
think I'll
whole
be
other.
able to handle it. That's a odd brag.
Hashtag humble brag.
Not even one that like I'm gonna apologize. It's true. I'm a pretty good vomiter. I not like on my resume, but everybody kind of knows it.
Your acting resume, it might be a good talent to put there.
Like I still have an acting resume. I'm sure I do somewhere. But that's cool. That's awesome to hear. And it's also really cool that it is in the hands of capable people. Like
Yeah,
I think
mean,
that Lionsgate
like
knows what they're doing when it comes to horror, and Sony knows when it comes to movies. So
sure. Yeah, I get what you mean, and we should clarify. Like, at least when I think of what you're saying, like, I don't think that you mean like the original game developer Scott Scott Conn
no.
is what I want to keep calling him. No, he clearly knows what he's doing. The dude's built an empire off of it. But when you think about what these things eventually become and where they can go, the fact that he was able to score a group behind him, like, because inevitably you're going to have to do that, right?
Right.
And it doesn't go the way of, I don't know, a la like Minecraft when what's his nuts becomes like super problematic and racist and all that, and he's like being backed by all of these really shitty European groups that have questionable goals, and so now like kids are out there playing Minecraft, and all I'm sitting there thinking the whole time is like, yeah, this money's not going to a great place, guys, but like, what am I going to do to stop that monster, right? No, you're right. Like, he's being backed by some really powerful and actually like kind of interesting people at this point.
Yeah. It could have been scooped up by Warner Brothers. And like,
for instance,
yeah, in terms of companies that I would not want to license my IP that I'm proud of, they're kind of at the top. I mean, like, it's weird to think that this was supposed to be the release weekend of Justice League 2.
Yeah, right.
And that didn't happen. And it's not surprising that didn't happen in any way, shape, or form.
I mean, in retrospect, it's easy to see where they made mistakes, but when they first like said like, hey, we're going to get in this game, I know that there was a lot of people out there that wanted to fight me, and they were like, this is it, this is going to be the end of Marvel, DC's going to just fucking own them because they always have. And it's just like, I don't know, guys, like, the one thing Marvel's always done better than DC is like figured out what people want quick.
And team ups. I don't mean to be rude, but like, I can name, without even thinking about it, successful Marvel team ups. I mean Marvel team up is an imprint issue type for the company in a way that
I could definitely take you to task on some stuff with DC, like Batman's Brave and the Bold's entire concept, right? Like, there's definitely there's but yeah, no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Well, that's the thing, right? Is at the end of the day, the one thing that DC has had always going for it is there's always going to be a part of every nerd out there that wants to defend them, no matter how much they want to be like, that last movie sucked. The second the next trailer comes out, they're like, but I'll go see that one, right? Like, that always happens with them, which is what you can see in the financials of all of these movies,
and
despite
if you
the
look,
critical
exactly, looking at all of the numbers that I brought up 2 years ago. The issue with DC and why it kept going as long as it did was because they were making the money.
Yeah.
With a product that was kind of mediocre. Right. Like, to be kind. Like, it didn't have the same care that was going into what Marvel was producing.
Right.
But they were making bank. And it's like, that's all we care about. And it had to take that money train stopping for them to say, all right, maybe we reassess this whole thing.
Man. Oh man, I don't know. Like, yeah, The video game stuff, just keeping on that train. I mean, we'd be dumb of us to ignore the fact that E3 just happened this week. I mean, obviously, listen to Say Report Junior for the full report on everything that happened there, but we should acknowledge it.
Yes, definitely. E3 occurred. I learned something about E3, and that's that Master Chief's first name is John.
Nice.
And John Spartan just feels like a Demolition Man reference. I can't stop thinking about that since I found that out. And it's almost enough for me to go back and play Halo. Almost. But
I could get in on some Halo Infinite eventually. I think I want to see what it is first, but I could easily see myself diving in on something like that.
Yeah, it's I mean, my memories are all multiplayer with Halo. I never liked the story. It never worked for me. And I feel like I'm at that point in my life where story is what I would want to experience from the Halo games, and my give a damn's busted on that whole thing.
You know, every time somebody talks about story and Halo and what Halo could be and all this stuff, all I think is, I think Elysium ended up being a pretty good surrogate for a Halo movie, since it was supposed to be one to begin with. Like, walking out of that movie, I felt like, okay, interesting. Feel no need to ever see it again, but I get it. I'm behind it, right? Like, and I think that that's a pretty apt description of the feelings that the world has on Halo right now. Is like, after everything, people are like, all right, like, I get it. Like, I don't know if I'll ever go back to Halo 4, but all right.
Yeah.
Which is a shame when you consider what the Halo 2 and Halo 3 were to the world. Like, literally groundbreaking sales numbers and artistic, like, leaps and bounds ahead of shooters of its time for what those games were back then. I
mean, Halo, the first Halo was that too.
Well,
like, I remember playing that game and being like, this has changed the game.
Right.
This is the next evolution from GoldenEye. I mean, like, people cite Perfect Dark, but really the best thing about Perfect Dark was that you could put AI in there. It was not, it did not control the way that Halo controlled. I mean, the twin stick FPS came to life and became what it is today because of Halo Advanced or whatever. War Evolved, is that what it's called?
I don't know,
Combat Evolved. Halo Combat Evolved.
Combat Evolved, yeah.
All right.
But I'm super excited about all sorts of really goofy stuff, like Nintendo really knocking it out of the park with their silliness, Guigi and all that nonsense, right? Very excited about...
I will keep my mouth shut because I have been burned by the Luigi's Mansion games. I don't know if I can jump into 3.
That's fair. I mean, you're going to, but that's fair.
Not for full price.
What other nonsense was there that was really kind of fun to talk about? Super excited they're bringing Ghostbusters back, re-release on that.
God, that's exciting as hell. We talked about that before E3 because that was one of those, let's announce right before E3 and hopefully get caught up in the wave of momentum. I wish I had a release date for it, but I was thinking as I was, contemplating Ghostbusters and what it meant again, will I be playing with those people that I just busted through an impossible wall to get that platinum trophy with? Like, there are still people I am friends with on the PlayStation Network from those days where it's like, we're getting the platinum for Ghostbusters.
Nice.
We can't talk to each other because there's no mic support in this game. We, just know this is the time that we're all going to get on because of a Game FAQs post. Back before Game FAQs was owned by GameSpot.
Nice. Man.
And that was 10 years ago. Thinking back to 10 years ago and just what that game meant to me. So I'm quite excited for Ghostbusters.
Yeah. I am super impressed by how flat Avengers fell with Square Enix.
Oh, me too.
I've never seen anything fall on its ass as hard as that did. There's been a lot of speculation that possibly that game maybe had some upsets in the final moments where they intended a lot more. Did you hear about the booth? Like it clearly Marvel bought in, and possibly at this point Disney money had to be involved, but it was just a straight up recreation Battle of New York, Desolation City, and people were like, oh, this is awesome, but then they got it and the game demo was just the same demo that we all saw with a little a little extra flavor on top, and basically everybody's like, where's the rest of the game that's supposed to come out in less than a year, and it's nowhere to be found.
Right, which is why I am more excited about Marvel Alliance 3.
Yes.
Mostly because it's all of Marvel coming together. It's
Right.
X-Men playing with these characters that have since become huge icons to all of popular culture, not just the comic book people.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it's the who do you want to be game. Like it's
yeah,
like playing on a playground, like when everybody's just like, I'm gonna be Johnny Five. Oh, well, fine, Johnny Five, Johnny Storm. I wanted Johnny Five in that game.
I want Johnny Five there. I am
Johnny
alive.
Five alive. Where's
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Stevens?
Fantastic.
It's not allowed to be here. Oh, why? Oh, okay.
Oh, he is the plague.
Oh, God. Oh man, yeah. Speaking of Cyberpunk, like the big reveal on what is it? Cyberpunk 2077.
Sonic 2077
Hey, I
is
got that right.
only what 50 years, no 20, 60 years from now.
Yeah, it's weird how that's not that far in the future, but okay, let's do it. Yeah, CD Projekt Red's new project, which I mean, I I, I love Witcher. Like, I think that's a great fucking series. So let's see what you got. I don't know, man. Weird stuff right now because they're dealing with the whole transgender kerfuffle. I don't like what's the respectful way to like talk about
Kerfuffle
it.
seems like the most respectful way to talk about it.
Yeah,
Like it means a lot for them to say we're going to include this as a character option, and then but it feels like they're leaning a little too heavily into it.
well, especially when their artist who designs a poster completely surrounding that idea as a marketing tool comes out and says, "We don't want to use this as just a marketing tool," and it's just like, well, you're not the person to be talking about this, maybe. So a little bit of tone deafness, I think, on the part of these guys. And the thing that you have to remember about that stuff when this kind of thing happens, that I hope that people realize is that as much as we want to talk about companies as like monolith, it's like they're not. Like there's people in these places that we hope are a little bit better at handling this stuff than necessarily the people we always hear from. The guys that they let have the mic are not always necessarily the best representation of the whole. So, this is
Plus,
me getting
at this time, it's all reactionary.
well, right.
It's not a well thought statement. It's someone just saying, no, I designed this and this was my intention. But then the company's like, hey, maybe don't speak for us though. Maybe understand that that's an art designer on the game's opinion.
Yeah, yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind is also I don't think that this was necessarily supposed to be the thing that they showed a spotlight on.
Yes,
I think their big hope was that, man, everybody's going to be talking about Keanu Reeves for the next 6 months, and unfortunately that got bulldozed. Yeah, so I think that's the other thing to remember about all this is that I don't think this is necessarily a focus. Now, you want to talk about how, well, maybe then they shouldn't have it be an aspect if it's not going to be something they're going to pay its due. Now, that's a whole other conversation that Zach can have. But yeah, so that was pretty baller. I don't know, man. Anything else that jumped out at you at E3 that we should mention before the like drive-by E3 that we're doing?
No, not really for me. I'm cautiously optimistic about the Breath of the Wild sequel.
Yep.
It was a cool trailer. I loved that like Ganondorf body. Like I think that's very cool. But I have issues with Breath of the Wild. And I want it to be more of a Zelda game. Or I just don't want it to be Breath of the Wild was very much a tech demo for the Nintendo Switch in addition to a Zelda game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that because of that, things like, here are all the toys you get to play with in this game given to you in the first 10 minutes. Being generous about it. But you get every ability right in the beginning of that game.
Yeah.
And
well, we've talked about this before. My feelings on it is that it takes the idea of what you're referring to as a Zelda game, and I think what it does is it elevates it to a very meta level as opposed to on the page level. And I get why like that doesn't work for you. Like I hear what you're saying, and like I get that. But it on the other hand, for me, that's exactly why this is the first Zelda game since Link to the Past that I played to completion more than once.
Yeah, and I mean, that's it. I mean, I know that it's different strokes for different folks. Especially what we're going to talk about with the rest of this episode, there is something very gratifying about having to bang your head against the wall, as opposed to, oh, you see that? You already have everything you need to get that.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, what are we doing, Dev?
All right, well, we're doing it. So I, through some trickery and knowledge and just good old-fashioned bullshit, was able to get my hands on a copy of Bloodstained Ritual of the Night a full week before its actual release date.
I think that our Kotaku and Action would call this just basic video game journalism in action. But anyway.
Yeah, no, you're right. But I am not those people. Like, I'm sure all of them had the game for that time. I'm not them. I don't have press credentials.
Yeah.
I wasn't contacted by, 505 Games to be like, hey, Devon, you should definitely play through this game a week before everybody else because of how well you did at the demo at PAX East. Like, it was cool when the guy's like, I'm impressed with how you did in that demo, but it's not like he then said, I'm going to send you an early copy of this game. I still had to go out and trek to the wilds of New Bedford to find a copy of it a week early.
Yeah, and I don't know what black magic you conjured in order for this to work, but you got to hold that game early.
I got to hold that game early. And this is my favorite part about it before we dive into the game, which is what I am so excited to do. My monkey's paw payment for that is I was rear-ended coming home on 195.
Oh, man. Okay.
Plus side, my car, completely drivable still. I got it all fixed up. I went to the Cape, and then I came back, and it needed a little bit of work, so it will be drivable again. And also, I'm not at fault. To quote the insurance person, it is the responsibility of the driver to be alert and give enough room to stop in time. So you're fine. And it's like, thank you. But it still felt like the monkey's paw closing its finger. As like, yeah, you got the game early, but here's this inconvenience.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're safe.
Talk
about the fucking game.
All right, time to talk about the fucking game. So, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is, in no uncertain terms, the spiritual sequel to Symphony of the Night from Castlevania.
Nice. Very, very nice.
And this is going to be, like, maybe slight spoilers for right now, but then I'm going to give a moment when I am talking about direct spoilers for this game. And if you are interested in playing the game, even in iota, after what we talk about beforehand, please stop listening until you've played the game, because I'm going to spoil big parts of it.
So let me just ask for some clarification stuff before we get too deep into things. So Bloodstained is not in the Castlevania universe, right?
No, it is a brand new universe.
Who are we talking?
World.
Excellent. Who are we talking about behind it as far as creators? Like anybody that's noticeable?
It's Iga. IGA is his name. I can't think of like his full name, but he goes by Iga, and he is the main director and driving force behind Symphony of the Night.
Okay.
When Konami was like, we're not interested in making any more games like this, we want to switch to pachinko.
It's weird how they did that with a lot of really good artists, but anyway, keep going.
They said, oh, okay, well, I'm going to make my own game with blackjack and hookers. And he did. There's blackjack and there's hookers in this game in no uncertain terms. And in one magical room, the blackjack summons the hookers. That's a real thing that happens in this game. I'm not being facetious. I'm super happy about it. Not in like a weird way. Just it was cool when it happened, and I'm like, oh, that's cool that happened. So the game is your basic Metroidvania where you're running around and you're getting items, getting upgrades, and every upgrade allows you to get a little bit deeper into the castle to try and solve it. The basic story is that you play Miriam, who is a shard binder. And what that means is alchemists, because alchemists exist in this world, bound it to magical crystals that were like discovered by the alchemists. And the people who were given these shards of crystals were bound to them so that when their investors in alchemy switched their investment to the Industrial Revolution, it's such a crazy story.
It's
awesome. For fear of losing their investors, alchemists bound shards to like a bunch of children and then used the combined power of those shards to summon demons into the world to show the world their worth. That like you're putting too much faith in machinery and not in God and spirituality.
Are you sure this isn't a Metal Gear successor as well? Fuck me. What is going on in this world?
Yeah, I'm not Metal Gear enough to know it. But like, It's crazy. And
Yeah.
Miriam is one of the shardbinders, but on the day of the ritual, she passed out into a coma, so she was not included in it. Turns out every kid that was included in this ritual died a horrible death, except for a boy named Jeeble, who also survived. So there are only 2 shardbinders left, Miriam and Jeeble has decided, well, fuck these alchemists. I'm gonna take over the world with the powers they gave me because they turned me into a monster. So he is your like Dracula-esque character sitting in the highest tower.
This is the most tasty anime-y bullshit I've heard since fucking Sephiroth in fucking
yeah, it
Final
is.
Fantasy VII.
It was
like this is nuts.
Let's talk about like a game grabbing you by the balls in the first 5 minutes, because Miriam and Jeeble were friends as children, and they made a promise that like if their power ever got out of hand, they would kill each other. Like, if you ever lose your humanity, I will kill you. I promise to do the same. So that's the only reason that she's involved in this, is because of a promise she made to her friend before she went into a coma for 10 years. That's it. That's her motivation. And the motivations change as the game goes on, but like that's going to be in the big spoiler event of the game.
It's your inciting incident, though, for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely what starts. It's the inciting incident. You said it beautifully. I don't know why I'm still talking. So you go and you explore this wonderful castle. You get all of these upgrades, like the double jump and the ability to conjure a giant hand, and you just need to go through the castle, just like any other Castlevania game. And it is wonderful. The game itself, everything that you equip to her outside of the armor is reflected. So if you put a hat on her, she'll be wearing that hat. If you put on like crazy accessories that you get, they are reflected on the sprite itself.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I mean, that's super cool. The weapons are all unique. Every weapon has a unique swing. So it looks like you're using a weapon. It's not like you're using a sword. It's going to be a blade swinging forward. It doesn't matter which sword you have equipped. It will always look like, no, it is, every weapon has a unique sprite that is used.
What was that 2D game that came out a few years ago that everybody was in their shit over? Because it was like one dude and he spent like 6 years animating each individual sprite. It's like Metal Slug or something. Not Metal Slug. I'll think of it.
I'm not sure. If you come to it, I don't remember the game that you're talking about. But yeah, that kind of stuff is awesome. And about after you fight,
that's why I was thinking about it, is because that kind of love in a game is always apparent as a player and appreciated.
And after you go, 2 bosses deep in the game, you can find a character who allows you to customize almost every aspect of the character Miriam. You can change her hairstyle. You can change the color of her clothing. You can change the color of her skin, the color of her eyes. So, like, it's this level of customization that you don't usually see in a game like this, especially when everything like that is happening.
Yeah, man, like that's awesome though. That's beautiful.
Right. But the thing I really want to speak on is, even though Bloodstained is not going to be available until June 18th, currently, because it was a Kickstarted game, one of the goals, I don't know, the stretch goals, thank you, Devon, for remembering, was an 8-bit version of the game. So a year ago, and we talked about it on this show, they released an 8-bit version that features the characters that are in Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. And it feels really cool. It felt a lot like Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse, which in a lot of ways, Symphony of the Night is a sequel to Dracula's Curse. So these are guys who really care about doing this, like these characters and building a world like this. And bar none, the best part of going from Curse of the Moon to Ritual of the Night is the fact that every single thing that you fought in Curse of the Moon shows up in Ritual of the Night. So you go from 8-bit graphics to these beautiful 2.5D graphics. And
that's fucking wild.
And
that's great.
And that's awesome. That is like one of the coolest things about it, especially as you go deeper into the game, because I'm an idiot and didn't realize that the first boss is also a 2.5D representation of one of the bosses in Curse of the Moon. I didn't realize that until yesterday morning, where I like woke up to a start and said, oh, that's where that one is. I'm an idiot. But you fight these beautiful 2.5D versions of all these bosses, and they're not in the same order, and what they give you is different than what they give you in Curse of the Moon. So even though they've created this world for themselves over, I mean, the game's been being made for, let's say conservatively, like 6 years. I feel like that makes sense. I feel like it was 2013, 2014 that this game was a Kickstarter game. They built a world in Curse of the Moon and then wonderfully paid homage to it in Ritual of the Night. And that was my favorite part, is how they did that in a world that they had basically just created for people.
Yeah.
So if you've played Curse of the Moon, you will not be disappointed by Ritual of the Night. And it plays wonderfully. The control is incredible. And my favorite thing, and this is the last thing before like we're going to go into the real spoiler-ific part of this episode, is we live in the future. In no uncertain terms do I talk about that all the time on the Say Report, that we currently live in the future. So that means that everything you're playing a video game on probably has a clock in it in some way, shape, or form.
Okay.
So the first day that I'm playing Ritual of the Night, I've been playing for 4 hours. It is past midnight, and I go see the blacksmith-esque character. He's not actually a blacksmith, but like that's the closest analog to other games.
Okay.
And the words out of his mouth are, oh, late night, isn't it? And it's just like, I'm so mad at this game right now, because it's like shaming me for still playing after midnight. But at the same time, I'm so in love that the game like knows what time it is and understands that it should give me crap about that. Oh, it was also a nice reminder to be like, oh shit, it's 1 a.m. and I have to work tomorrow. Thank you, game, for that.
Awesome. Man, that's phenomenal.
But then the other side of that, right, is on Saturday, I went down to Cape Cod, and, you know, that's a story for next episode. This is the Bloodstained Ritual of the Night video game episode. I woke up at like 5 o'clock so I could get in a couple more hours before I had to drive home. And when I went to the same blacksmith character, he said, getting an early start, are we? And it's just like, it goes both ways. But like, for anyone who plays this game and like does it overnight, the game's going to judge you twice. I just want you to be prepared for that.
Nice. It was Metal Slug, by the way. That was totally the game I was thinking of, where the dude like spent like years individually crafting each sprite for every character so that it's just beautiful on the screen.
Yeah, Metal Slug is a wonderful game. I love Metal Slug. But yes, so that's it. The last thing I want to say before we actually put the spoiler tag is it is a spiritual sequel to Symphony of the Night. So when you reach the end of the game, maybe it's not the end of the game. Okay. So now I'm going to give you a second. We're checking with Sejohn. Sejohn, anything to say before we go into this secondary part of the episode?
No, I'm excited. Let's do this thing.
All right, cool.
Let's talk about some fucking Symphony of the Night-esque shit.
So now it is the spoiler issue of Ritual of the Night, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. And let me start by saying the best part about getting this game a week early is that I had to solve every puzzle on my own.
Yeah, man. I am very, very thoroughly impressed. Was thinking of those early days of Fez when people were just like, I don't know what this game is. And like slowly over time realizing what the game was, but it was only due to the community and the fact that like those early people had no fucking clue what was going on. And so I'm very, very interested to hear what your experience was playing a game without any source of like help.
Right. And it's not even just like, because my mom would be like, just go online for this. And it's like, no. First of all, I wouldn't do that anyway. Second of all, there is no online for this right now. It is just me and my wits. And that was like the coolest thing to feel. And it's so rare that you get to feel that in any sort of game nowadays.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, look at this. I'm going to give away some pretty big, like, ways to solve issues in the game right now. Game's not even out yet. But but I'm going to share that with people right here because I muscled through and I found them. Right? Like, it just feels like the thing to do
So
in a weird way.
Don't get mad.
Yeah, don't get mad. That's, again, this is why this is still spoiler talk and all that. Like, you have until the 40-minute mark to get the hell out of here. So that's 9 more seconds.
Don't.
Yeah, so, okay, we're at the 40-minute mark. Official spoilers begin. I'm going to talk about the thing that just fucking kept me, like, stuck for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that got me stuck for a while is I knew for a fact that I had to go swimming. I knew that you find water areas in the underground caverns of this game.
Right.
And I'm like, I need to go down there. But I do not have, like, in Symphony of the Night, you get a thing called the symbol of J that allows Alucard to go walking underwater without taking damage.
Right. Okay.
I don't have a symbol of J. And unlike Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Miriam floats. She does not sink down to the bottom, which I guess is a vampire thing. I think maybe that's why they can't cross running water, because they sink to the bottom and just die. They're hyper dense.
I couldn't tell you. I don't know, man.
But
I know that they had to fucking bury Angel with cement, to be fair. When Connor buried Angel. I don't know. I don't know. That's the extent of my vampire knowledge.
So she treads water. So what you have to do in, like, the obvious room where you need to go underwater, there are 2 things that are swimming that you can kind of get to kill. And a big part of this game, it takes it more from Aria of Sorrow and Dawn of Sorrow, where Soma, when he kills enemies, there's always a chance that they'll release their soul.
Okay.
And you'll get a power from that soul. Miriam, because she is shard-bound, when she kills things, they release shards and they bind to her, giving them those abilities. So there are things underwater which you cannot get to, but you can kind of figure out a way to kill. And then I think both of them have, I'm going to say, about a 20% chance of dropping the shard that they have in their possession.
So you may have to kill them multiple times.
Yeah. It's not like bosses usually have a 100% drop rate on shards, because most of the time those shards are what's going to give you progression.
Right.
These things, no. You might have to kill a thing that is in an area that you're not supposed to be able to get to multiple times in order to get an item from them. And the one that's real important is called the Decima, which you fight Semas on the galleon in the beginning, the pirate ship that you take to the castle. It's like an upgraded version of them, and you have to kill them until you get Aqua Jet, which allows you to push water, and then you're basically like Wall-E in the movie Wall-E with his fire extinguisher, and you use that to push yourself underwater and then explore. And in that room, like in the big room where you fight these things, that's the one you're supposed to do it in. If you go to any of the other water areas when you have this, you quickly find areas that you cannot pass unless you're walking. Okay. So it lets you know, well, you're going to be able to walk underwater eventually, or you're going to get some ability to have momentum underwater. But keep exploring until you find it. Going in that room where you fight the Decimas and the Glyphsons, they're like horses. They're just horses that run in water. Like, they're not hippogriffs. They don't have a tail. Because the game uses a lot of asset sharing, so like every character model is like a weaker form and a stronger form.
Okay.
They just take the horse and make it run underwater, which is kind of hilarious with the first time you see it. But also it's kind of like, you don't know that it's a different creature. You just think that, oh, that's just the horse stuck in water, poor bastard.
Poor guy.
I know what I was like when I was stuck in water as a kid.
Until that fucker kills you.
So you go in that room where you get the Aqua Jet, and if you go through the door at the bottom of it, you are greeted with a trident gauntlet. And like basic video games, they shoot and they retract. And you need to go through that using the Aqua Jet. And it's basically like, you're going to learn how to do it eventually. Oh, by the way, these tridents, minimum 120 damage.
Ooh, ow. All right.
So and I mean damage your health is not like Symphony of the Night where you never go over 400. Like by the time this is your only option, you should probably be at around 500 HP. But again, that's only like you get to screw up 3 times.
Yeah, really. You only get to make a couple of mistakes here, and
Right.
good luck.
So you go through all of it, you get through the Trident Gauntlet, and you come to a door. Right? You come to an area where you can jump out of the water and you go through a door, and you find what is called the Hidden Desert. And the actual ability to just walk underwater like a regular person is located in that hidden desert. So you are not able to get there unless you're able to brave that whole thing. And you
Jeez.
need to go to the hidden desert to get the ability to go underwater if you ever want to see the true ending of the game.
I was gonna say, so one of the things that I think that we should point out at this point is that by this point you had finished the game once and gotten the quote unquote bad ending, right?
Yes.
Now, who refers to it as the bad ending? Just you, the community, the creator? Like is it considered a bad ending, or is it just not the complete ending?
So I mean, that comes from Symphony of the Night. In Symphony of the Night, you traverse Dracula's castle, you eventually get to the Dracula's throne room, and you find that the lord of the castle is Richter Belmont, the protagonist from the game that immediately came before Symphony of the Night, Rondo of Blood. And if you fight him and defeat him, you know, you get an ending, but Dracula's castle is still there, and you wonder if maybe he was being controlled. Like the ending says, perhaps his actions were being influenced by another. And there's whole sections of the castle that you didn't really even need to explore in order to get to Richter.
Right.
So, you know, it's just like, so it's basically, why don't you go explore the castle a little bit more? And in Symphony of the Night's case, God, it's such a fuck. Like, thinking of it in terms of, yes, I had to do a stupid Aquajet gauntlet to prove that, like, hey, here's a new movement type, now master it in 5 seconds. But in Symphony of the Night, you have to find a gold ring and a silver ring. To get the gold ring, you need to go into the catacombs and fight a succubus.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a gold ring from beating her. And then to get the silver ring, you need to go deeper into the catacombs to find armor that allows you to break spikes when you hit them. And then walk through a spike-lined corridor to find the silver ring at the end of it. And then, if you wear both of them, like the descriptions for the rings are, like the gold one is "wear in," and then if you have the silver ring, it says "clock room." So you have to put both of them on in the clock room in order to open up a new area where you're given the holy glasses that allow you to see beyond illusions. And if you go into the fight against Richter wearing them, you see like an orb above his head, and you attack that orb, and if you defeat the orb, you are taken to an inversion of Dracula's castle. So it's the whole game you played through, but upside down. And then you need to explore that to figure out what you're going to do next.
All right, so they hide like half the fucking game behind this, right?
Yeah. So in this game, you get to Jeeble, you fight Jeeble, and then you know it's you and the blacksmith. His name is Johannes, and he's like, "You did what you promised. You ended Jeeble's pain." And she's like, "Yeah, but this castle from hell is still here. I feel like maybe there was something else we could have done." And then it just comes up with game over. And you're kicked back to the title screen. So obviously you're not supposed to kill Jeeble. That's what that tells me. So I go, and there had been a whole section of the game that I had just missed. I had just missed a whole section of the game because I got like a double jump ability and just didn't go to a specific room with it. But then I went there and I found a new section of the game. And then in that new section of the game, I got the ability to absorb blood. Which, here's another hint. There's a trophy for absorbing a high quantity of blood using this blood steal ability.
Right.
That's 1,000 liters in order to get that trophy to pop.
Jesus.
But there's a moment in the game where you get 500 easy. And you have to do that to progress the story. But still, like that's That's not indicated anywhere. You just need to keep using the Bloodsteel ability till it pops. And I'll tell you, it popped right when I went over 1,000. So happy hunting, trophy hunters. And you keep playing, and you eventually go down into a secret laboratory where you fight a doppelganger version of yourself, and then open up the Caves of the Inferno, where you fight an enemy that can switch gravity.
But when does it get really strange and weird, Devon?
Oh, we're about there. You need the gravity inversion ability in order for the game to really get strange and weird. Because using the invert gravity ability, you're able to, in the Tower of the Twin Dragons, if you go to the very end of it and invert, you can jump off the edge and quickly invert again to land next to a treasure chest. And inside that treasure chest, as it feels like a nod to Symphony of the Night, you receive armor that allows you to traverse spikes and any other environmental hazard.
Nice.
And there's a port in the very entrance of the game where it is lined with spikes. Now, my big issue with this game is there are Iron Maidens that like block progress in one or two areas of the game.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you get, like I mentioned before, you get a giant hand, which you use to move giant blocks. So I naturally assumed that that giant hand would also help me move these Iron Maidens. So as soon as I got it, I went back to one and tried to grab it, and it just wouldn't grab it. Okay. So I'm like, okay, so there must be something else, right? Maybe there's something I don't understand yet. And every time I got a new upgrade, like you get an upgrade that allows you to shoot out a beam of light and then travel that beam of light, I'm like, oh, obviously I can shoot that behind the Iron Maiden and go through it. And it lets you do that, but then once you hit the Iron Maiden, no, you get chomped and hurt again. So Sejohn and I, we're talking.
Yeah,
we were Friday.
We were on headset together,
and I am just like, I'm stuck in this game. I don't know what to do because there's these goddamn Iron Maidens, and I should be able to grab them. And in that time, I don't know if it was the distance was correct or whatever. I grabbed the Iron Maiden with the hand. And it's not like there's a whole secondary thing of this game where you can upgrade any of the shards that you collect using various materials from enemies.
Yeah.
That did not happen with this. It just happened to be that I was on the right pixel to grab that Iron Maiden. And then I'm like, finally, I can traverse. And then I get to the end of that hallway, and it's just lined in spikes. And I'm like, well, that was fun for 4 minutes. Now I need to find an ability to traverse spikes. Right. And I knew that there was a secondary area to go because going through my bestiary, one of the enemies said that it spawned in the Livre Ex Machina, which is the library of the game, and in the Oriental Sorcery Lab. And I'm like, well, I haven't been to the Oriental Sorcery Lab yet.
Right.
So that needs to be through those spikes that I currently don't know how to walk through.
Common sense would tell me. Right? Excellent
deduction,
work.
Right?
Yeah.
So you get the Aegis armor, and you're able to traverse it, and you go into the Oriental Sorcery Lab. This is the last time I'm going to say it, I swear. But oh my god, what a name for a place.
Yeah. It's something definitely to be talked about is maybe off mic. Like, what the fuck is going on there? But yeah, for sure.
And when you traverse all of that area, you get to a fight against Zangetsu, who is actually the main protagonist of Curse of the Moon. And now you've seen him a couple of times throughout the game. He's actually the second boss that blocks customization. And you get to him the second time, and he's like, I need to know that you are capable of doing what needs to be done. Give me your all, because I'm not holding back this time. And you fight him in a battle, and you defeat him, and he goes, good. Here, take my sword. It has the ability to cleave the moon in half. And in the background of the Jeeble fight, the moon is there. So I immediately rush back to that fight, take that sword, and strike at the moon. And that is where the rest of the game opens up. Like, I had only completed about 80% of the map at that point. So 20% of the game was locked behind this absurd traversal to go to the secret desert to get the ability to walk underwater so that I could traverse the water to get to the secret sorcery lab. And
Wait,
then
wait. Okay, so a different sorcery.
there
lab,
are multiple sorcery
okay.
labs.
I got you. I got you.
The in-game explanation is this was an alchemy training ground before the castle from hell sprung up. So don't be surprised if you happen to find old alchemy labs. So you find the underground sorcery lab, the secret sorcery lab, and then finally the oriental sorcery lab.
Excellent.
And that's just part of this game, is finding those three places, because you have to go to the underground lab to even get to Jeeble. But the underground lab is the end of all the underwater stuff.
Okay.
And then, after the underwater stuff, that's when you're able to go up to the oriental one. So that is exactly what you have to do. And then you kill the monster that's controlling Jeeble, which is named Gremory, which is the final antagonist of Curse of the Moon. So, like, all of these lovely tie-ins to the Curse of the Moon game keep happening.
Nice.
To the fact that the
awesome.
characters in that game are Zangetsu, Miriam, Jeeble, and an alchemist named Alfred, who you deal with a couple of times. He's the one you need to defeat in order to be able to walk underwater. That's really all he does.
Okay.
And then you do it, and Jeeble dies without Gremory controlling him because it's stopping the corruption of the crystals in his body. And then they're like, well, now we need to find Gremory. And very early on in the game, the moon is bathed in blood in this one particular room.
Oh.
But only the first time you go through that room. So if you're not, like, looking, or if you've never played Curse of the Moon, you'll probably be like, oh, that's cool. And then you never have to go to that room again. But if you ever go back to that room, it's not bathed in blood anymore. It's just a regular room. But after you kill Gremory, it's bathed again and the moon is in the background. And you need to take that sword and strike at it again in order to get to the end game of this, which is... Okay, so it was inspired for the creators of Symphony of the Night to take a level that they already designed and just flip it upside down.
I'm okay.
To have you do it. Are you okay?
No, I'm okay. Yeah.
And just flip it upside down to create a whole second game, basically. Yeah. This one, they zoomed in on, like, regular stuff and called it the Den of Behemoths, and you just fight giant versions of everything. It's real Super Mario Brothers 3 level 4 type stuff.
Nice. Very nice.
And then once you get through all that, you go to the Ice Tomb, which was, like, oddly the only level type from Curse of the Moon that was never represented was the Ice Tomb. And that is where the final confrontation happens. And there's also a trophy for map completion. It's not 200.6% like Symphony of the Night. It is 100.10. And I know that people out there are like, why doesn't it end at 100? I'm actually happy that it does that, because you're able to have seen 100% of the map before you go into the final fight. And that's what triggers that final 10%. And I think that's just...
I got you. That's fair.
I like that. So you can know that you've seen everything before you trigger that final fight.
Yeah. Because otherwise, completionists, if they didn't do that, you might have some kid out there that's running around for hours trying to figure out where the last 0.1% is because it's 99.9 or something, and then he realizes all he had to do was go into the fucking... So that's fair. It's a little weird when you get that sort of, like, more than 100% nonsense on things that depending on how it's presented and how important it is to the progression, that can get a little gross, but I'll give you that.
Yeah, it's not as crazy as, like, I mean, Symphony of the Night has definitive glitches that allow you to get to 200.6%. Like, there are little bits of the map that you need to break to go over 100% in each of the castles. This one does not have that, which is pretty nice.
That's pretty fucking rad. Yeah, like everything that sounds awesome.
Like, it is such a good game. It is just, the design and everything about it is great. Now, I played on 1.0 of the game. I did not get a day one patch because day one has not happened yet. So there are some breaks in the game that I imagine will be patched out beforehand. but
Okay.
we talked about them briefly in that there are like 4 locked doors: the carpenter room, the millionaire room, the Celeste room, and the warhorse room. You need to find keys to unlock them.
Yeah.
Currently, the key to the carpenter room unlocks both the millionaire's room and the carpenter room.
And I stand by the fact that that might be by design.
And I would 100% agree with you if I didn't find the millionaire's key in the Den of Behemoths.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it clearly is just like some sort of writing in the programming that has those two like overlapping with each other to trigger that door. Yeah. Which is fine. Like, that doesn't bother me in any way, shape, or form because it doesn't really affect the game. But it did mean that I was able to beat the millionaire's room like way before I had the key to it. I'm trying to think of like just little stuff that I want to hit. Eventually you're gonna there is a vampire in the game named Orkul Dracul, which, my God, like, thank you for that. And
nice.
And he allows you to take out books from the library, and based upon your progression in the game, more books become available. And secondarily, if you take the books and then return them to him, he will give you the ability to take out more books at once, capping out at 3 books. But as you go into the final area of the game, if you have any of the books still, he comes and is mad at you, saying that I told you to return the books. And you can fight him. He's an optional boss.
Nice, nice.
If you fight him, go back to the library once he is dead.
Oh.
Because he's a vampire, so he doesn't die. Which I think is maybe my favorite thing ever said in a video game. And she's like, "You're still alive?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm a vampire. You can't just kill me."
What did you think? All you did was stab me in the arm.
Yeah. And she's like, "Oh, okay." And then he goes, "But you have proven you can just take all of these books." So then you can take out all 21 books that are available, and each book gives you like stat bonuses.
Oh, so I get it. So you may hold on to the book because you want that stat bonus. I get you. Cool.
But then if he allows you to take all of the books, you get every single stat bonus, which is like double experience, faster mastery, stronger familiars. Is pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, that's baller. Yeah, so I was gonna say, I think the most exciting thing about this description, like in your like gushing over this game, is how much of just a game-ass game it is. It is the most video game I think I've heard about coming out recently. Like, there's just so much about this that just feels so, so ingrained in that like nostalgia and retro gaming aspect, and I have not once heard you talk about this being a retro style game. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like it still fits in modern games that we play now. I'm just glad that it doesn't feel like the entire time that it's like a callback. I feel like I know 10-year-old kids that have only been playing games for 3 of those years could pick up this game and still enjoy themselves in a way that you could with Castlevania back then, in a way that nowadays you can't necessarily when they put out a game that is meant to be in that type. Because if you don't have that nostalgia for that thing, it really doesn't click, right? Like, I felt like, yeah, like in a weird way, it kind of makes me think about the other weird thing that happened over the last few weeks, the ukulele reveal. And like, I can see how ukulele is like a beloved enough thing now that they're going to make a sequel, because there were enough people that were like, "Man, I loved those games, and that's the only one to come out recently." So I totally bought in. But I also know that if you gave that game to a kid that never played those styles of games, or a person that never did, then it doesn't work, right? Like, we saw that in action. That's why that game wasn't the financial success necessarily that it was for a lot of critical success that it got in small circles, right? And like, it's awesome to hear that this game does that.
Yeah, it does. I mean, Metroidvania has become such a genre lately in the indie scene. Like, I could throw a rock and hit like 7 Metroidvanias that, like, just right now, like The Messenger turns into one. Spoilers for The Messenger. I know you're not there yet. And you look at something like Gato Roboto, which is one that came out recently, and I played it like a Metroidvania because that's what I thought it was. And then finding out after the fact that, oh, no, there's a pretty linear structure to the game. Like, you can accomplish things in whatever order you want, but if you go in aqueduct, heater, catacombs, you get the items that make each one of those easier.
Yeah.
So it's not one of those ones where it's not Mega Man where you can do any of these. The double jump that you get at the end of the aqueduct is sort of required for the heater. You can figure out a way to use missiles to get higher, but that's not really what we intended.
Yeah, that was never clearly not the intention for what
because my favorite part about Gatarabata was I'm like, this is awesome that the game is requiring me to learn how to do these missile jumps. Like, what a great aspect of game design. And then to go back to the aqueduct, which I did not do first, and then get a double jump, and I'm like, oh no, I just found a way to exploit the mechanics of the game, which on one level is cool, but on another level meant that this wasn't by design to learn to do this.
Yeah, which is doubly disappointing when you think it is. Like, it's one thing to not even think about it and have that and learn that and realize it's not by design. Like, it sucks to be you, developer. But to, like, have that feeling that you and the developer are on the same wavelength and have that ripped away for a moment is, like, definitely disheartening.
Right. And that's why, like, I took to Twitter to be like, was it intended to be completed in a specific order or anything? And I found a lot of other people who had played the game saying, well, no, I did it in this order. Like, I did it in a similar order to you. And so it's cool that the community still found it like that, because this is a community of people who are playing games like this, so they know that, like, that stuff is out there.
Should be out there.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, like that. Like, most games have, like Super Metroid. You can get through that game very quickly if you're able to exploit movement abilities.
Yeah.
But then you come to a game like Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, and it's very obvious how much care has been put in to every single button press and every single upgrade, and it's awesome. It is just awesome.
Cool, man.
And just word to the wise, because I am currently sitting at, I only need 3 more trophies for the platinum. And there is this part of me that so badly wanted to get the platinum before the game releases. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. I need to find 4 more beasts to kill and take their shards. Okay. And that's 2 of the trophies right there. But based upon the fact that when I finally got the true ending of the game, I unlocked hard mode, there is this voice in the back of my head saying, you need to play this game on hard mode to find these villains. So even though there isn't a like, beat the game on normal, beat the game on hard, beat the game on nightmare, because there's even in harder mode from hard, because when you load it up, it
Guess
says
what trophy number 3 is.
Yeah. It does not have that. But when you start a game on hard, it says complete on hard to unlock nightmare mode. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. So I just wonder if that's how those came in.
Yeah.
Because I have been everywhere in the castle. I got 100% map completion, 110% map completion. And there are items that I don't have to complete quests. And it could just be the fact that I haven't had that day 1 patch. And maybe there's something keeping these things from spawning because that game 1 patch is not in there.
Yeah, maybe.
But who knows? Also, the demon barbers, the devil barbers, I'm not sure what their names are. They kill them when you come to them until you get a drop from them called the Ravu Burl. That is this game's equivalent of the Vorpal Blade from Symphony of the Night. Nice. Which the Vorpal Blade is the unsuperpowered form of the Chrysogrim. But then, eventually, if you're finding everything, you get the ability to turn 4 of those into a Chrysogrim-esque weapon. So, you know, it's out there. It's out there.
Nice.
And here's a real big tip from your Uncle Devon before we wrap this up. When you get to the drawbridge into the castle, which doesn't have a name, it's not like Castlevania. That's the name of the castle in the Castlevania games. That's why they're called Castlevania. I feel like a lot of people don't know that. Probably because they don't get to that part of the game. There's the ability to drop down into the moat, do that, and walk back, and you'll find an item called the 8-bit coin, which you can immediately turn in for very strong versions of the weapons that are available at the beginning of the game.
Nice.
My recommendation is to use it for the Demon Bringer, which is a huge Warcraft reference. It is an Orc War Chief's axe. It swings harder than anything else that is available right from the offset of the game. It does extra fire damage with every strike, so you'll get the hit and you'll do fire damage. And the only problem with that is that Zangetsu, the second boss, is resistant to fire. Oh. So it won't add to that fight. It'll still be kind of difficult. But go do that. Go get that weapon. Like, it'll make the earlier part of the game a little bit easier. But also, it then becomes a quest line to use the 16-bit coin that you can find to upgrade that weapon. And the other thing is,
it's a video-ass game.
It's such a video-ass video game. It's so good. And the last one, this is the last hit. You find yellow shards that are like passive augmentations. Like, you're stronger, you have better constitution, better intelligence. Okay. Those are the ones that you want to upgrade when you're upgrading your shards. Because if you can get any yellow shard, well, most yellow shards. Actually, the only yellow shard that this didn't work for is augment gold. So take it as you will. If you upgrade them to level 9, they become active all the time. So that you can have like augment strength active all the time and have another thing in your yellow shard slot.
Nice.
And you could just keep doing that. Like, currently I have augment strength, augment constitution, optimizer, which makes weapon use easier. Like, all that's active all the time because I took the time to upgrade those.
Very, very sweet.
So man. It is just, it's great. Obviously, if you listen here, maybe you weren't like into the game before. Maybe you're playing it now and you just wanted to hear some more about it. Play Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. It is such a good game, and it's $40. Like, I have just described a game. I have put 24 hours into this game so far.
Hey, man.
And it cost me $40.
That's not bad at all.
There are $60 games that get 10 hours from me, and then I never go back to. Now, granted, mileage may vary. I'm the kind of person who, like, will beat Symphony of the Night 3 times in an evening because I'm bored. So it's in my wheelhouse. But you do not need to be good at Castlevania to be good at this game. It is very forgiving.
I am not great at Castlevania games.
Well, what I would recommend if you're still on the fence,
Castlevania games, I should say. Keep going.
If you've gotten this far and you're still kind of on the fence, Curse of the Moon is only $10.
Oh.
And it has a beginner's mode. And that beginner's mode, really what that means is modern game mode. You have unlimited lives. And you do not have the crazy Castlevania knockback when you get hit.
Okay.
That's it. So it's a game that you can play without it being too difficult. If, like, you're not like me and past the time when you were a kid playing Castlevania 3, waiting for your mom to come pick you up from school. Because for some reason they had that in the radio station where you worked.
Awesome.
But yes, so this has been Awesomation of Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Please go play it. If you're like, wait for it. It's such a good game. I cannot believe after playing it at PAX East 3 months ago that it lived up to every expectation I had. And
that's awesome.
I just want everyone to experience it.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad that it did. Like, that's baller. I fucking love video games. Here we go.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have anything to say before we send it off to Will and that?
Just gonna say before I go that you can hit me up at Siege versus the World. And remember Jeremy. That's what I'm gonna say.
Oh, nice. That's very kind. I had a thing that I remember what I was gonna say. Haha. If you want to talk to me about Bloodstained, please find me on Twitter at Devon D. Decker. And Eris dies. Right? Like
we're still in spoiler mode, right? Fuck it.
It's not. No, here's the true fact, right? There's this whole discussion of whether or not that's a spoiler now that Final Fantasy VII Remake is coming. I'm going to be right here and I'm springing it on Sejohn. Every episode of the Say Report, until the release of that game, I'm going to remind you that Eris dies.
And I'm going to go and cry after every recording of this fucking game.
And that's fine, but I've never played Final Fantasy VII, and even I know that.
That's not even the biggest spoiler in that game, which I love. But anyway, let's
go.
Right,
that's the thing, right? So there you go. So remember, Eris dies. Remember Jeremy. And Will, please complete this ritual of the night.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Sejohn Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.